On Michigan Avenue, when I entered First Meridian Bank to shut my account, the branch manager, Preston Caldwell III, guffawed. It was a genuine, unfiltered laugh, as if he were sharing a private joke with himself. He was 34 years old, the son of the bank's regional president, and had been explaining rather patronizingly for the past 40 minutes why individuals like me were unwelcome in his domain at our family dinner table. Preston had no idea about my account balance, but soon would. My name is Nathan Briggs. I am 41 years old. I was raised in a humble two-bedroom house in Rockford, Illinois, where my mother managed with 2 jobs and a budget carefully planned on the reverse side of a grocery bill. After graduating from Jefferson High School in 2001, I chose not to pursue higher education, not because I lacked the ability, but for other reasons. The day following graduation, my mother's second job vanished, leaving our finances in disarray. Remember this as you read further. If narratives like these resonate with you, click the subscribe button immediately. Each week we share tales about individuals who were deemed insignificant, discarded, and undervalued, and their responses to those circumstances. Have you ever been underestimated due to your background? Please share below. Now let me transport you back to where it all began. Her name was Diane. Later known as Diane Briggs, I crossed paths with her at a trade fair in Chicago 11 years ago. At that time, I was there representing a logistics software firm I'd been managing from a rented office in Wicker Park for 3 years. She supervised the registration desk for a downtown financial firm, exuding an air of tranquil intellect that instantly drew me in. We've been dating for 2 years before I proposed. On a Tuesday morning in Grant Park, without any ceremony, she agreed to marry me because I had initially intended to do it during dinner but lost my nerve and asked her spontaneously while we were walking. She chuckled and accepted. Our wedding took place the following spring at a modest venue in Evanston. Her family hailed from the North Shore, bearing the subtle, unassuming wealth that becomes palpable as soon as you step through their door. The furniture is expensive yet well-worn, and while the wine is of good quality, there's an undeniable lack of pretentiousness in how it's served. Her father, Gerald Caldwell, was a man who constructed his empire over decades in silence. For 30 years, he transformed a small bank in Wilmette into a respected mid-size institution with branches spread across northern Illinois and southeastern Wisconsin, known as First Meridian Bank. From our initial interaction, Gerald was kind to me. Although we didn't share many similarities, we found mutual understanding in values such as hard work, honor, and high regard for Diane's intelligence. In contrast, his brother, Roger Caldwell, was a different character. 4 years younger than Gerald, Roger seemed to be of the same bloodline yet distinct in essence. He had witnessed Gerald's construction of something significant and dedicated his life to reaping its benefits without putting in any effort himself. 12 years ago, he was appointed branch manager at the Evanston location, a position he acquired following a career riddled with 3 business failures and 1 hushed settlement that was never explicitly discussed within the family. The job offered a title, a decent wage, and an office corner, which Roger had been ruling for 12 years. His son, Preston Caldwell III, was the third to bear the name, as if the name itself were an achievement. At 34, Preston held a finance degree from Northwestern and had joined the bank 2 years ago as a junior relationship manager at its Michigan Avenue branch. He donned pricey suits, exceeding the cost of my first car, and exuded a self-assurance bred only by never hearing a refusal from someone with true authority over his life. I'd encountered Roger and Preston on a few family occasions prior. This dinner, however, differed. The interactions were superficial and courteous, as expected among strangers at a wedding, but this gathering stood out. Words were exchanged, smiles shared, then it was time to move on with no thoughts given afterward. But this evening was distinct. The gathering took place at Gerald's house in Winnetka, a typical family event, and my presence was not as an unknown but as Diane's husband of 6 years, suggesting that Roger was readying himself to form an impression of me. The dinner was held in celebration of Gerald's 68th birthday. Diane's mother, Helen, orchestrated it at the house, a spacious brick colonial on a tranquil street mere blocks from Lake Michigan. Helen was one of those women who manages to make a dinner for 15 seem effortless, hinting at the extensive labor hidden behind the scenes. She prepared roast lamb and a pasta dish, and there was a lemon cake that remains vivid in my memory till this day. Approximately 12 individuals occupied the table, including Diane and myself, as well as Diane's parents, Roger and his spouse Pamela, Preston accompanied by his then-girlfriend Courtney, who seemed somewhat overwhelmed during the evening like myself, a pair of cousins, Gerald's former college roommate and his wife. The talk was typical of family gatherings, friendly chatter, people exchanging updates, and stories retold numerous times. Everything was going smoothly for Diane and me. However, Roger briefly interrupted the conversation to inquire about my academic focus. Although the question seemed innocuous on its surface, it was the type often posed during such occasions when one runs out of things to ask. Yet, a subtle lean forward and smile hinted that he might already have a guess and was curious to see how I would respond. I disclosed the truth. I mentioned my high school graduation leading directly to employment, beginning in warehouse logistics before transitioning to software and founding my own company. Roger gave the nod people use when feigning thought over already known information. He then complimented me with a polite, "That's commendable. Not everyone requires a degree to thrive." After a pause, Diane gently touched my knee under the table, her familiar way of sensing my deliberation on responding. Preston noticed our exchange and, recognizing an opportunity, gave me a knowing smile and asked, "So, is it an app-type software we're discussing?" His question was subtly dismissive, disguised as curiosity. I concisely shared that our company creates supply chain optimization software, specializing in routing and inventory systems for mid-sized distributors, with approximately 40 enterprise clients predominantly in the Midwest and Southeast. Our growth has been consistent for 8 years. Preston maintained his smile unchanged, commenting it as small business stuff. He acknowledged its potential in the smaller market. "The lower end," Roger chuckled slightly, more of a contented noise than a big laugh. I sipped my water. Impressively, Gerald asked a genuine question about our clients and how we manage integrations with legacy inventory systems. He's always interested in operational aspects. We had an engaging discussion where both parties actively listened for a few minutes. However, Roger wasn't done yet. Toward the end of dinner, as dessert was being served and the conversation had become less formal following wine, he reappeared. He began discussing his son's progress at the bank, mentioning that Preston would manage a comprehensive portfolio by the next year, and how the right education and contacts had opened the right opportunities. His gaze then fell on me, a confident smile playing upon his lips, the kind that never fretted about power outages. He said, "Sometimes some paths are more challenging without a solid base. It's not a criticism, Nathan, but there is a limit, you understand, you can sense it. Those who attend prestigious schools forge beneficial connections. They learn to perceive beyond that barrier early on." The room grew still, Diane put down her cutlery, and I met Roger's gaze before glancing at Preston, who nodded approvingly as if this was an unremarkable statement. "Roger, where does First Meridian usually manage its main accounts?" He seemed surprised. "Mainly at the Michigan Avenue branch," he replied. "I'll visit there this week," I mentioned. He looked puzzled for a moment. "All right," he agreed. Then he turned to Preston and continued their conversation. "Unbeknownst to Roger Caldwell, let me take you back a bit. Back to the roots, because that's where the true tale resides. In 2001, I graduated from Jefferson High School in Rockford without any specific plans. All I had was a part-time job at a regional shipping warehouse on South Alpine Road and a mother who relied on me keeping it. So I did. I excelled at it. I began to observe the way routes were structured, how handovers between shifts caused blockages, how one minor inefficiency could impact an entire day's operations. I started jotting down my observations, not because anyone instructed me to. Due to recurring pattern observations, after 6 years of warehouse work where I managed floor scheduling, I developed an efficient system. No digital tools required. Just an intricate spreadsheet and a physical board that significantly reduced our average fulfillment time by around 22%. One day, my supervisor, Harold Kinsey, who always wore his Carhartt jacket from October to April, called me into his office and said, "Briggs, someone might patent this and earn money if you don't." The idea had never crossed my mind before that the solution I created for frustration with inefficiency could be a product, even a company. It took me another 3 years. I saved funds, enrolled in a basic programming course at Rock Valley College at night, not aiming for a degree, but to comprehend what I was asking developers to construct. I found a partner, a Milwaukee-based developer named Craig, and we worked together for 6 months on a prototype that could be presented to potential investors. We visited every mid-sized distributor in the Midwest for a meeting. Most declined, some postponed, while a few agreed. Building a company without handouts means driving to meetings. When I relocated to Chicago and established an office in Wicker Park, we had 7 paying clients and actual income. At the trade expo where I met Diane, we had 23. By the time of our wedding, the count was 31. 5 years prior to that dinner celebration, a decision deemed too aggressive, risky, and premature by many was made. With a profitable company, steady clientele, rising income, and favorable margins, I opted to expand into a new sector, cold chain logistics software for pharmaceutical distribution. This field was already crowded and costly to penetrate. I invested 18 months in creating a compliance tracking module compatible with FDA documentation specifications. During that period, I faced the resignation of 2 employees who perceived me as overstretching myself. Consequently, a substantial portion of my reserves was depleted. For 3 consecutive months, I refrained from drawing a salary to prioritize the company's survival during its development phase. Deanne, aware of the situation, never advised me to scale back. Her unwavering support reflects her character. Then I secured a contract with a mid-sized pharmaceutical distributor based in Indianapolis. This led to referrals for bigger opportunities, one being a larger distributor in Cincinnati. Subsequently, we sealed a 3-year enterprise deal with an Ohio regional hospital network, which in turn sparked 2 additional contracts. By the time I sat at Gerald Caldwell's birthday dinner, savoring Helen's roast lamb, and as Roger elaborated on my potential, my company's revenues would have significantly challenged Roger Caldwell's expectations. 4 years prior, I established a business operating account at First Meridian Bank, located near my workplace on Wacker Drive. The bank, constructed by Roger's brother, was where Preston built his career, and I managed small business affairs. Over time, I transferred approximately $4,200,000 into this account. When I visited the Michigan Avenue branch recently, it wasn't due to any intention of causing a commotion. Instead, for a couple of months, I had been considering transferring that account because of changes in the fee structure and better alternatives. The dinner merely expedited my decision-making process. 10 days post Gerald's birthday dinner, I stepped into the Michigan Avenue branch on a Thursday morning, donning a jacket purchased at Nordstrom on this very avenue, aiming to blend in with the sophisticated crowd. The setting was typical of a flagship location on one of America's priciest streets: lofty ceilings, gleaming marble floors, an atmosphere of tranquility bred by wealth, a space designed to comfort certain individuals while leaving others questioning their presence. I have entered such rooms throughout my career, always reminding myself of the same truth. I belong here due to my achievements, not the name on the door. Requesting an audience with a relationship manager was my next move. A desk was led to where a young lady named Alexis welcomed me amiably, fetched my account, and promptly, almost instantaneously, her demeanor changed from friendly professionalism to heightened awareness. She briefly stepped away. In the interim, Preston Caldwell emerged from an inner office. Upon sighting me, he paused. Briefly, you could perceive his thoughts connecting my face with the dinner table, then the account that materialized on Alexis's screen. It was evident when a figure popped into his mind, and it didn't align with the image he had constructed during our lamb and lemon cake evening in Winnetka. "Nathan," he announced. He extended his hand. His smile differed from the one at dinner. "You seem more cautious, more attentive. I wasn't aware you were a client here. Please, let's go back." We returned to his office. He proposed coffee, which I declined. He suggested water instead. Again, I declined. He settled in his seat and placed his hands flat on the desk, maintaining a composed demeanor suitable for managing unforeseen circumstances. "In what way may I assist you today?" he inquired. "I wish to terminate my account," I responded. His gaze never wavered. It was a smile that hinted at puzzlement, as if unsure whether this was a test. "Terminate your account," he echoed. "Affirmative." "Your account," he checked his screen, "contains substantial assets. Is there a reason for this decision?" "An issue with the bank, service matter, fees?" He sought clarification, hoping to resolve any concerns. "Preston," I said firmly, "I've made up my mind and I want to close the account." He subtly leaned back, regarding me as he had at dinner, not necessarily hostile, but with a trace of disdain, a hint of self-restraint struggling to suppress itself. "You mentioned that account holders typically don't take such actions without consulting a senior relationship officer. Could you clarify which tier of account holder you are referring to?" I inquired. There was a moment of hesitation before he responded. "Pardon me," I repeated. "You said at this level. Can you specify the account tier?" He adjusted the screen so I could see it, revealing a balance of $4,212,000. "I am aware of my account's contents," I stated. A prolonged silence followed, one that I shall recall for years, a silence heavy with significance, a silence that permeated the room and left us both acutely conscious of it simultaneously. Preston seemed to be subtly shifting his jaw. Despite his professional demeanor, he recovered swiftly. He leaned forward once more, interlaced his hands on the desk, and said, "Nathan, I must apologize for the incident at the dinner last time." His words were chosen with a precision that suggested they weren't an expression of remorse, but rather a calculated move. It appears some things may not have been conveyed effectively. "I'm not here for dinner," I stated. "I'm closing my account instead." He gestured towards his phone, intending to call a higher-ranking officer. However, I firmly declined and requested his personal attention for this matter. In my mind, I was making him stay put, handle the transaction himself, and later explain the closure of a $4 million account on his record. To his credit, he conducted the procedure with grace, filling out the necessary forms and guiding me through the process without haste or confusion. He inquired about my preferred method of payment, to which I responded a wire transfer to an account at Lakeshore Bank, where I had already set up the receiving account the day before. He completed it silently for several minutes without interruption. In the background, subtle office sounds echoed, keyboards typing, a distant phone ringing, traffic humming through the glass, all continuing their usual routine while an irrevocable event unfolded at this desk. When he eventually raised his gaze, he inquired, "Is there anything I can do to alter your decision?" His voice reminded me of that dinner table conversation, the word ceiling seeming as immovable as a mountain range I'd never surpass, as if it had been permanently erected by an authority, leaving no room for change except acknowledging its presence and finding a suitable place to accommodate beneath it. "No," I responded. Preston softly expressed, "Your business is appreciated here." I acknowledged, "I understand." I rose, shook his hand, exited the lobby onto Michigan Avenue, where the crisp, clear November morning offered that unique Chicago skyline, an air that invigorates with a sense of future. For a brief moment, I paused on the sidewalk, absorbed the freshness, then returned to my car and journeyed back to my office. I wished to share what ensued, as the tale didn't conclude within the bank. Diane discovered my actions that evening during our dinner conversation at our Lincoln Square kitchen table. She listened intently, remained silent for a while, then she asked, "Did it fulfill your expectations?" After contemplation, I responded truthfully. "More so," I admitted. She chuckled, a genuine laugh resonating from within. She stated, "My father will learn of this incident." Subsequently, Gerald phoned me in 2 days, maintaining his usual composed demeanor. He was inquiring about the account closure and desired clarification regarding the circumstances. I explained the dinner matter as objectively and factually as possible, avoiding any additional commentary or drama. I simply recounted Roger's remarks, Preston's comments, and my own actions. After a moment of silence, Gerald admitted, "Nathan, I apologize. I should have intervened during that dinner." I expressed no blame towards him for his brother's conduct. I genuinely meant it when I said, "Roger can be challenging." Gerald responded, "He's always had this preoccupation with what others possess and its origin. I've addressed this issue with him on numerous occasions." He paused before adding, "I will speak to him again." The specifics of the discussion between Gerald and Roger following that call remain unclear. Diane learned from her mother that Gerald's frankness towards Roger was notable, as they discussed matters that needed resolution for quite some time. Subsequently, Roger contacted me 3 weeks later to arrange a coffee meeting. I agreed, and our encounter took place at a cafe on Oak Street on a weekend morning. Upon my arrival, Roger was seated by the window with his hands enveloping a mug. He appeared older than during the dinner, reflecting introspection rather than aging poorly. He admitted his error and did so without much preamble, which I appreciated. He confessed to judging people based on credentials he inherited instead of earning, a practice he was not proud of and had maintained for too long. I paid attention as he spoke. He inquired if there were any projects I was involved with that could potentially suit him first. Regarding potential collaborations with Meridian's business clients, I mentioned I would consider. Since then, I have been pondering over it. Later, Preston contacted me a few weeks afterward with a handwritten note, an unexpected gesture. He disclosed that he had investigated my company Postbank departure due to the loss of a $4 million account and was intrigued by his findings. He admitted assuming something unfair during our dinner, for which he apologized. I responded, expressing receipt of the letter and gratitude for his gesture. "I've realized that those who undervalue you can be vocal yet irrelevant. The crucial aspect lies in your past accomplishments before they became part of the narrative. The years spent toiling in obscurity, the choices made in solitude when figures failed to add up. The creation born without endorsement or pedigree, devoid of any self-imposed ceiling. These are moments that remind me of my mother during meetings with people who occupy prestigious offices. She drafted our family budgets in pencil, foreseeing their inevitable alterations. Yet she persisted relentlessly. She lacked a ceiling in her mind's eye instead, focusing on the next item on her list, and then the one following it. I learned this resilience not from universities or families with banking lineages, but from a woman in Rockford, Illinois, who held down 2 jobs and kept her pencil sharp. If you've persevered thus far, I wish to ask you a sincere question. Who was it that convinced you of your own limitations? At what precise moment did someone gaze at your origins, your zip code, your academic background, your surname, your financial status, and conclude they had already determined the heights you could reach? The crucial question is, what was constructed during their absence, since the $4 million was merely incidental? The essence lay in its existence, a product of countless years of labor that transpired unseen within the dining room in Winnetka. These years lacked the luster of documentation, for I didn't possess a narrative as eloquent as Preston's. The significance stretched beyond Michigan Avenue and the November chill, encompassing each breath of the crisp lake air. It was about deciding where my funds reside. Roger Caldwell remains in charge of the Evanston branch of First Meridian. Gerald has taken a step back from active management. Preston, I've heard, is thriving. He secured a promotion last year and is reportedly more attentive than before. People evolve, I firmly believe. Deanne and I share dinner with her parents almost every month when in the city. Helen still prepares that famous lemon cake. Recently, my business sealed a significant agreement with a major pharmaceutical distributor based in Philadelphia. This is our biggest deal to date. I bank at Lake Shore because their fee structure is advantageous, and no one there has ever inquired about my educational background. I graduated from Jefferson High School in 2001, which is the only degree I've ever earned. I have no qualms about this. I never have, but let me share something. One day, I walked into that bank on a Thursday morning and faced a man who made it clear where my potential was limited. I observed him transferring $4 million from his branch to another party, and that experience led me to ponder ceilings for quite some time afterwards. I believe ceilings are genuine, as I've encountered them myself over the years. However, they are not composed of anything unyielding. They are constructed from others' presumptions. Yet, assumptions are the sole entity in the world that can be abandoned without spending anything.